said I was 18 and she's like driving me to the airport, and her 18-year-old daughter is literally on a plane to Thailand. Like, I'm not going to go to Stanford. I want to go to the jungles of Asia to learn about sex. And she was like, well, like, do you have like a hotel? Are you going to like, what are you going to do when you get there? And this is like pre-cell phone. So I was like, Mom, I'm going to ask the people on the plane. And I totally
Mom was like, totally safe.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Yeah. Go right at, you're an adult now. So they told me to go to Koh Samui, and it was like all like bars and parties and all of that. And I was like, this isn't what I seek. So I went to Koh Phangan, like the home of like the full moon parties and the raves and all of that. Took like way too many drugs. I still had like chipped like teeth in the back. The dentists are always like, holy shit, like you shouldn't even be alive with chipped teeth like that. There's like this Midwestern dentist I have, and she's like, honey, how did you chip your teeth? And I was like, I took too many drugs at a party at Sunrise in Thailand. She was like, honey, thanks for being honest. This was like a month ago at the dentist. I was like, totally. So anyways, I'm in Thailand, and I was at a half moon party, and there was this Israeli drug dealer who was trying to sleep with this woman from San Francisco, and he was trying to sleep with me. And I was like, yo, I'm out of here. I don't know what I came here for, but like whatever. I go home. I run into them the next morning. They're eating breakfast. He's pissed because I didn't sleep with him the night before. So he storms off, and she looks at me and she's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I don't know. And she was like, you don't belong here. And I was like, okay. And she was like, I'm going to show you where you belong. Go pack your bags. And I was like,
Oh, she was helping you.
She's helping me.
Oh.
Yeah. No, she was kind. So yes. So I packed my bag. I was like in some hut up the street, and she was like, come. She takes me on a boat to this place called the Sanctuary. And
I've been there.
Whoa!
Oh, so I've done that from the boat. So you go to Hot Yan, and then you climb over a hill, or maybe it goes right to the Sanctuary. But I've been to the Sanctuary.
Maybe you're not supposed to say where it is. Maybe it's like the beach.
So the crazy thing, this might be made up, but people told me it was true that Alex Garland, who wrote The Beach, actually was at the Sanctuary in the 90s, because they built all their huts up in the jungle and took LSD all the time because they wanted this like colony of like spiritual exploration.
I went to one of those. It wasn't LSD, but not on the Sanctuary side, like on the other side of the mountain, the Hot Yan side. And I'm not going to tell you where it was because I don't even know the name of the bar. But there was like a night where you knew that you could go to the bar and you could buy mushrooms or MDMA.
Eden. It's called bar. Eden.
Eden. Okay. All right.
By the way, drugs are punishable by death in Thailand. So
do not.
We're not telling you to do it.
And the military and the police are always taking over. So no drugs at Eden, no matter what we say.
It was so awesome. And so just bring it back to you. I remember Sanctuary. It was like all vegetarian, vegan food, really good vibes. I think a lot of yoga classes. So I guess, tell more about your story there.
So I got there, and this was a little bit before it became like a tourist destination. So it was still wilder. There wasn't even that much electricity. And then it sort of built up to more of like the resort it is today. So 18 land there. People are teaching like Osho workshops, Kundalini, like Tantra, all of this. And I was like, whoa, I went from being this like Colorado, like suburban kid. Colorado's way cooler now than it was when I grew up there. And I was like, people like this exist, like they wear like bright colors, they take LSD, they have sex with each other, like what? And so like mine just like, poof. And so that started this kind of understanding that there was a perspective in the world that led people to have better sex than what most of us grew up with. And it was some combination of like opening your mind with LSD or plant medicine, intelligently and wisely, and not by purchasing it from Eden, but from a trusted Swedish drug dealer or something like that. Anyways, and then...
Don't get your drugs in the street, kids, okay? Only from the street.
You gotta be smart about it. And teaching, Osho meditations, yes, Osho of Wild Wild Country, but really that like, it was like expand your energy, free your voice, get wild. Like the heart of those teachings was like, look, like a bunch of people try and meditate, but they have so much compressed emotional energy that like, it's hard to actually understand the level of surrender and presence that meditation is pointing you to when you're like so tightly wound inside. So it's this intentional like unwinding of your being to like heal your trauma, free yourself yourself of all your conditioning. And one of the things that I really started to understand was like, we think like, oh, I grew up as a kid and got like negative sex ed. And, you know, for me, grew up very religious and, you know, had like a kind of misogynistic view of the world. Maybe I watched a bunch of porn. And it's not like you can just put that down when you then want to have the most epic sex of your life. That stuff actually gets into the physiology of your body. It creates different patterns psychologically and in actually your musculature. And so I learned all about what does it take to systematically unwind all of those blockages so that you can get sexually free. Because the best sex, we all know, is wild, unleashed, unself-conscious, shameless sex. But how do you actually start with a nervous system that's so programmed with all of that and get to actual shamelessness? And so that's what I learned. And I spent like 10 years in Asia. And it was fucking awesome. Went back to Stanford for a little bit and then did what I do now.
You were there for 10 years?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I think that's a good segue, though, because we're talking, this episode's about mind-blowing sex. And obviously 10 years in this sort of school, if you will, it sounds like it was some sort of school of like, it's not hard knocks at all. It was like sex knocks life. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But how do you define having all of this experience and all of these years now in your training, in your professional life, in the world of sexuality? How do you define mind-blowing sex? And we're going to get into tips later, but I would love to hear that from you, Layla.
Okay, so mind-blowing sex to me is a combination of being so enraptured by what you're feeling that it becomes the whole experience. So whether it's like really incredible pleasure, really incredible ecstasy, an internal flow state that you're not in your head, you're definitely not fantasizing about something else that's happening. Like you can be in kink states, but you're present. And it's like the same as we would say, like, what is like a mind-blowing, like athletic experience? It's like you're in this state of just like, wow, like mastery, like expansion, like you're doing it fully, right? Sex is the same because a lot of the time we've never trained ourselves sexually in our entire lives. We're like, oh, it should just happen. Like it's something that comes naturally. But it's like tennis doesn't just come naturally. Eating healthy definitely doesn't come naturally. Being fit doesn't come naturally, right? You have to work at it. So a lot of the time, mind-blowing sex is an expression of us having learned about ourselves as sexual beings, learned what we love, but then actually using tools the same way that you would train in sports to train yourself sexually. So things like using breath work very conscientiously, which can regulate your nervous system. Using things like sound, which can tone your vagus nerve, which can activate deeper and more profound layers of pleasure than you ever thought possible. Using things like mindfulness, because what happens with sex a lot is we're very like dopamine driven. So we get very turned on by the idea of it and the idea of someone new or something exciting. And so when we're in dopamine systems in our brain, we're very activated by all of the possibilities. But to enjoy sex, to have actual mind-blowing sex, we have to shift to a different network where we want what is. And this is what we're not taught about mind-blowing sex. We tend to think of mind-blowing sex from that dopamine system of like, I want to try this, I want to do that, I want to fuck this person, I want like all of that, right? And it's so much excitement. And that's why when you meet a new person, right, there's nothing like a shiny new object, right? Yeah. And part of that is in our culture, we are so rarely trained in the art of wanting what is, especially in sex, because sex is not some like perfect formula that unfolds in front of us. It's actually human bodies, which are complex and multifaceted, right? It's a whole human. It's like a universe in front. It's a whole universe. And we're terrified of the magnitude of that. So mind-blowing sex is, yes, like states of ecstasy, incredible orgasms. Usually being in love or able to love the person in front of you is the best kind of sex. And being so into it that like you lose your sense of everyday control. But ironically, that doesn't happen by creating these like mind-blowing ideas of what sex is. It's really through retraining yourself to be able to get super high off of what is. And that is a lot of the art of what I study.
I love that definition, that it also, because it doesn't feel like so narrowed, right? Like mind-blowing sex means that you touch here and you lick there, and he has an orgasm and she has an orgasm, or she, you know, all the bits, everyone, it's not about orgasm, and orgasm's obviously a part of it, but it's pleasure, it's connection. It's like one way that I personally have experienced it is like I'm in a vortex, like you're saying, that part where your head's gone and it's this ecstatic vortex of just like, was this 20 minutes or 3 hours? And was there even an outside
You lose
world
yourself
here?
in the experience.
Yeah.
Like you totally lose yourself. That's what fucking I'm thinking about.
But not in a disassociative way, in like a really powerful,
Yeah.
wonderful way. And
not a Gregorian mind,
No,
like a
not-
time.
Not
frame,
a like do whatever you want with me. I'm like a carpet now,
or like what a lot of people go through is like, is this over yet? Is this over yet?
Yeah.
Like that whole thing, which is very common. Which we maybe we'll talk about that. But we've had plenty of podcasts on that experience and why that is. But let's talk about a little bit more. So we defined mind-blowing sex. What, in your opinion, is the biggest barrier to mind-blowing sex? I think you commented on that a little bit, but do you have other ideas or concepts as to why that is?
Well, it's in the name, right? We want our minds blown. So what would be the opposite of mind-blowing sex? You're in your fucking mind, right? And so this is what is so interesting, is that so much of what we learn about sex, how we're conditioned about sex, puts us in our mind. We get put in the prefrontal cortex. That's where all of this like dreaming and fantasizing and wanting exists. And in the prefrontal cortex, if you stay there during sex, which is very easy to do, you're going to stay in a fantasy realm. You're going to want to keep engaging in sexual fantasies, not necessarily being present, thinking about whether you're good enough, how you look, what your partner's thinking, if you're taking too long, if you're going to have an orgasm, all these things, which are, here's the thing, so normal in the mind. Like the mind is that part of the mind, the discerning, judgmental, like, oh my God, what time is it mind? It's so unsexy. And oftentimes what it's designed to do is protect us from what we're actually feeling. So your mind will start going nuts of like, did I actually do the laundry thing correctly, or like whatever, or, what is my lover thinking, or, am I going to come fast enough? And when you're in that state, literally biologically, you cannot be in the deeper states of somatic surrender, which is what we're talking about. So when your mind is blown, you literally have to know how to switch off your mind. We talk about this now in meditation, right? Like, how do you get out of your mind? How do you not be controlled by your mind? We rarely talk about that in sex. And we rarely talk about why your mind gets in so much control of sexuality. And a lot of the time it's because even though we crave having our minds blown, we're actually terrified of it at the same time, because it's a loss of control.
Yeah. So I will speak for April and I, because
you usually do.
I do often, but we're very similar. We're also very different in a lot of ways, but we are both very heady people who are like doers. We're like, you look in our planner, we're like, okay, 8 things to do today, and it makes us feel safe because we're not going to forget the thing. And so I think there's at least with everyday life outside of sex, I think sometimes we need that so that we show up for the appointment, or we take care of ourselves in the way we need to. And then in sex, though, it's like a whole different world where if we were, if you like the books like The Game and things like that, where they're like all the sex hacks, and people are literally like, looking at their phone mid-sex to see if they're doing it right, which is just makes it so that you're not present. And it's an art and a practice. And I personally always said that great sex kind of is a meditation. Yeah. And it really is. It really is a meditation, like on some sort of single point of focus on connection, on sensation, on something, not your brain being like, so what am I going to have for breakfast tomorrow? And am I going to come? And what do I look like? And what do I smell like? And do they really love me? And how is this going to go? And then, like, I could say for myself, when my mind has been in that place during sex, I am not having mind-blowing sex. I'm having okay. I'm having good sex, maybe. Or maybe
if you're lucky,
not so much. Yeah, if I'm lucky. But the times that I've had the mind-blowing sex, it's been very, very flow state, and just a whole different experience. And I just want to honor to people that are listening, easier said than done.
So much easier said than done. And that's what I really want to emphasize is like, we often tend to think of ourselves in the domains of sex as like something is wrong with me or not good enough with me, right? And what I would love for us to take away from what we've at least shared so far is when you're in that mind, the opposite of mind blown, like mind fortress or something like that, is like, you're just in a part of your nervous system that's all it knows how to do. So you're like using the wrong part of, it's like an inappropriate part of your nervous system, but we've all been trained to go there. And so being able to, as you all said, like be more in control of having mind-blowing sex, having it more often, not just stumbling upon it sometimes, is to actually understand your own nervous system such that you know the tools that will switch you out of that network into the other networks. And the thing that I often say when I'm stuck in that realm is I'm like, what is it that I don't want to feel right now? And because I'll find that if I'm really in that heady space, there's something that I'm trying not to feel, which is the great blessing of that network, right? You don't want to feel, you don't want to be sensitive, you don't want to be in yourself, you just want to get errands done. That's what that part of your mind is for. But when you're having sex, it's all about feeling. And because we've also been so trained to believe that sex should only be about pleasure, you should feel pleasure, 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 and just the right amounts until you come at the same time. We have this kind of like compressed,
Yeah.
yay! You know?
Every time. That's what it's all about.
There's this compressed reality of I should only be feeling pleasure during sex, but actually in that somatic limbic realm, any emotion is possible. And we kind of know this intuitively that like you can have a crygasm, right? Like you can climax, you can like feel sometimes like states of rage, like you can get like in your like in your feels. Like sex is more like art than science a lot of the time, but we treat it like a science. And when we do that and tell ourselves you're not allowed to feel what you're feeling right now, we'll go into our heads and we'll feel stuck in our heads. But the thing that keeps you in that holding pattern is an unwillingness to feel what you're actually feeling, which might not be pleasure. But if you feel what you're feeling, what happens is it actually unlocks the feeling doorway so you can start feeling. And the best sex is when you are actually at that level of connection with yourself.
Okay, so pragmatically speaking, a list to define the applicable tips to go from good sex to mind-blowing sex. We've talked about mindfulness, getting out of your head into your body, which we've talked about many times. And you talked about the shifts of thinking about, can you list them? And not, I don't want to list them. I was trying to repeat them, but you're the expert here, and I wanted to make sure that
how do you go from
we
good
have
to
a
great?
list. Yeah.
So one of the best tools is truly breathing. So you can learn all kinds of advanced breathwork techniques, but the simplest is to just breathe deeper and fuller than you normally would. Like you notice that actually happens when you're climaxing, but if you're in your head during sex, you're probably not breathing that deep and full. When you start doing that actually neurologically quiets the thinking part of your brain and puts you back into your feelings. You can tie the breathing to your genitals, which is very helpful. So it's to imagine that you could breathe into your pussy, your penis, or your intersex genitals. You can't actually, but when you do that, what happens is it helps switch your focus from wherever the fuck you're going into the future into your body, which is another kind of secret way, but it's obvious when you talk about it, to switch your perception from that part of your brain into the sensations inside of your body, which is where you want to be. So breath work and also attention to the sensations inside of your body. And you can combine those two into a very simple practice, which helps so much. I can't tell you how many times I've been having average sex and I'm just like, just breathe into your pussy. Just breathe into your pussy. Pay attention to what you're feeling in your pussy. It sounds so simple. And yet, because all you really need to do is switch gears in your nervous system, something that simple can actually be the gateway between mind fortress and mind-blowing sex.
You can breathe into your penis too. You can breathe into your genitals, whatever you're owning, right?
Well, all your bits, your asshole. Yeah.
Yeah, you can totally breathe into your asshole. I love a good asshole breathing.
It's like, so at least in my experience, it's a lot easier when I'm self-pleasuring for me to do that, to like, all right, focus on my pussy, breathe into my pussy. And then when I'm with a partner, I try to do that. But now, and I think, I got some codependency-ish, which I learned from Jason Gaddis. I love how he says that, codependent-ish stuff. But also, even aside from codependent, it's a lot of energy to take on because now it's my energy, their energy. And so I'm like, I need to breathe in my pussy. And then sometimes I need to close my eyes, and then they might feel like I'm disappearing on them. But I'm like, I need to do this right now so that I can like just get into the space. And my ultimate intention would be to be able to do that while in connection, whether it's eyes open, or there's ways to be in connection without your eyes open. But it's at least for me, it's been a challenge. It's something that I've experienced. It's easier on my own. And the more I practice on my own, the easier it gets to bring into partnership. And the more I practice with partners, where I specify, let them know that that's what I'm doing, then that helps us, because then they're like, not like, what the fuck is going on? I've also had that experience where you're like, I'm in my head. What do I need to do? How do I get out of this? And one tool I've used too is to say to a partner, I identify as a kinky person. In that moment, I was like, I'm in my head. I'm so not present for sex right now while we're having sex. And he was like, okay, what do you need? And I felt into it. I was like, I think I need you to slap my ass right now.
Yeah.
And which is not all the time. Sometimes I'm like, I think I need you to hold me, or I need you to just massage my pussy or something, or we need to stop having sex or take a bubble bath. But and in that, so just there's all these different ways where I think if we slow down, we feel into the tools there, or the ways that are available, or taking a deep, long breath, which I love that reminder, because God, I should be breathing a lot more than I know I'm breathing, but I should be doing a lot more of those deep breaths. So really, yeah, I love everything. I love everything that you're sharing. I think that it's all just like hitting home for me. It's all about me, apparently.
It usually is.
Yeah, what's
apparently.
new?
Only child syndrome over here, everyone.
Hey!
Real quick, I'm gonna plug in my computer, and then I have more more things
cool.
on the to-do list for us. All right.
What are we at? 24?
Yeah. Tangentially speaking today, huh?
24. What? What's that mean?
You're just going on tangents left and right.
Oh, I know, but it's welcome and fun.
Yay!
Yay! Tangents.
I want to hear more from Layla. I hear from you every day, Amy. Come on.
So do you want to comment on that, or do you want us to ask you the next
No,
question that
nope,
we have?
don't.
Well, I was going to say, because you asked for a list, there is this other practice. It really comes from the Taoist tradition, which is when you have stagnant energy in any organ system, the amount of goodness or high vibration feelings that you can have in that organ system is highly limited. So we get this kind of intuitively with our heart. It's not as woo as it sounds. Like, we all know that if you have an open heart, you're going to feel more love. You're going to feel more joy. You're going to feel more compassion, right? Like, open-hearted is like all of these associated experiences. And most of us know that intuitively versus closed-hearted, right? My heart's closed. I feel numb. I don't feel a lot of love. I feel shut down. I feel grumpy, like whatever it is, right? So there's this like kind of intuitive understanding of what it means to have open heart. Same with mind, open mind versus closed mind, right? We have this sense. But when we start talking about other organs, all of a sudden it sounds kind of like woo-woo.
What's that?
Sorry about that beeping noise.
Leggie's freaked out about the thing. He's like
Which
freaking
thing?
out about the thing on his neck.
Really?
He's shaking. He's like freaking. I've never seen
He's
him like.
not even on it.
I know, but I think he's like panicked that it's going to be him next. He's like,
Weird.
he's never. My dog never shakes like a chihuahua. He's shaking like a chihuahua because of this.
But my dog
neck
is the
thing.
one that
But
has.
his dog's the one.
I'm not
her
even
dog, I mean,
zapping him. I'm just beeping and buzzing him.
I know, but he's freaking out. I've never seen him like this.
All right. Anyways,
Sorry.
they'll be fine.
Okay.
Don't worry. We
They'll be
got
fine.
this.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So we have this intuitive knowing in these parts of our body, but we start talking about, like, let's say your womb or your pussy or your cock, right? It's like, what does it mean to actually have an open cock versus a closed cock? We've never even mentioned this, but it makes sense. If you have internalized shame, if you have convinced yourself that you're taking something from a woman, if there is a feeling like there's something wrong with your sexuality, that literally exists as a kind of somatic contraction in, let's say, your penis, right? Inside of pussy, like any kind of fear of sexual violation, which makes total sense. Like, there's nothing wrong with any of this, but it can show up as stagnant energy inside of our pussies, inside of our penises, inside of any kind of genitals. And so what happens is it compresses our ability to feel in that area. So when you systematically do practices to release fear, shame, guilt, stagnant energy, what happens is in the free-flowing energy you actually get, and it doesn't quite sound right, but think of like you have an open heart, you have an open pussy, you have an open penis. What happens is you start to feel so much more. Just like you can feel more with an open heart, you can experience so much more with an open mind. When you do these practices to release what is causing a closure in, let's say, your closed sexuality, then with that new openness and availability, you feel so much more pleasure, so much more orgasmicness. So you can do that with your asshole, for instance. Like people carry so much baggage around the asshole. It's a freaking portal to the deepest, most powerful, most potent orgasms, right? But when we've sort of layered all of this meaning and story onto our asshole, it literally compresses the spectrum of feeling that we can access in there. And so when you start to unwind that has added up inside of your body, you'll also be able to get to mind-blowing sex a lot more because you'll be able to tap into those feeling states which contribute to that experience.
Oh, wow. Okay. So these are some applicable tools like I was asking for. I was like, list those. Here's my whiteboard with my magic erase pen. So, okay. So it sounds like anyone out there is capable of doing this, no matter what experiences you've had in the past. And you were a person that came from traumatic sexual experiences in the beginning. So this is great news for everyone out there, which we've been telling you since the start of Shameless Sex. So no huge surprise, but I'm so excited just to have you kind of narrow it down and help folks drop into the applicable pieces. So to make this something that occurs not irregularly, but often. So we're looking from moving from regular sex or boring sex or somewhat meh sex. You know what that is? Yeah, I've had that before.
Me too.
That's the best way to describe it. People probably are like, wow, she's very literal. So to move from this type of sex in your life to something that you can have mind-blowing sex all the time, what do you think the best pieces are? And I know you already engaged some of those, but just to go deeper.
Totally. So having a solo practice is really important. So I encourage having what I call a pleasure practice, which is like woke masturbation. So you're not just doing the same thing that you would do easily, right? Like if it's a vibrator, a same kind of fantasy, like we all have the thing we love to do, right? Like I love like touching my clitoris in circles and having some sort of like sexy fantasy. So it's not about not doing that. It's about giving yourself a space, even just once a week, or fuck it, even if it's once a month, it'll still change your life to do it 12 times a year. Like what you do is you get to reprogram your sexuality. So it's really hard to go from creating the neural networks from when you masturbate the same way all the time to having mind-blowing sex. So when you have a solo practice where you're doing what you all were talking about of like adding in some breath work, doing this kind of, if you're like, how would I release stuck energy from my penis in my womb? Like that's exactly what I teach on my YouTube channel, like is the practicality of how to do that. So when you're doing that on your own, you're actually creating new pathways in your brain to be able to orgasm and experience sex. So sex is a habit, right? And the more that we do sex in a particular way, experience orgasm in a particular way, climax in a particular way, we're actually building the neural networks that make it easier to go through that route. So how we masturbate directly translates into how we experience sex. So if you'll take even one masturbation session a week, call it a pleasure practice, and make it more about feeling your genitals even more than you usually do, breathing a little bit deeper than you normally do, doing something where you let yourself feel whatever you're going to feel, that's going to start to shift how you will experience sex with your partner. Having a regular communication practice. So one of my favorite tools is called Fears, Desires, and Loves. And you just spend 2 minutes each talking about what you're afraid of, 2 minutes each talking about what you desire, and 2 minutes talking about what you love about your partner. And even like the most basic communication exercise like that, it's like it allows for that level of trust and connection to be able to do what you all are talking about. Like be like, hey, I'm in my head right now, or, you know, I'm going to breathe for just a moment if that's okay. Like it starts opening that conversation, which is so, so, so essential. And then usually if you're on your own, if you're not going to like fly to Colombia and do a Tantra retreat or something like that for a week, I get it. Like you want to try and incorporate like one simple practice into sexuality, right? And like it sounds so simple. We're like, oh, what could that really do? But it's like, you know, if you just ate kale once a day and that was all you did for your diet, you'd still actually be changing the course of your health. Or like if you did like one 15-minute walk, like even that is changing how you feel, what you experience, all that. So sex can be literally that simple. Like just trying it, like breathing into your genitals just for 5 minutes during the next time you have sex, seeing if your partner will try it with you, right? When you start to combine those basic, simple pieces, this is a good starter practice. And then of course, if you want to go pro with it, that's when you do like more in-depth trainings. Like that's why people would do 6 weeks with me. That's why they would do a year-long professional certification. It's because if you really want to master it, then you do so much more deep work on yourself and become like, you know, a sex witch or a tantrika or whatever you want to be.
I love sex witches.
Sex witches are my favorite.
No, I was called. So I did this training, and we did this with. I did a Hakomi holistic psychotherapy training, and as one of the rituals in the last day, you sit in front of everyone in the training. It's like 30 people, and they have 1 minute. You're in silence, and they come up with a word or a name for you. And most of them, for me, I'm like, you know, blonde, mermaid. You're like Aphrodite, goddess, and I'm not hating on you all, by the way. Thank you for calling me that. Lioness. One person looked at me, he's like, Death Witch. And
yes.
I was like, what? Okay, all right, cool. Then and then later, I was like, all right, okay. And later, I talked to him, and he was like, I'm sorry, was that too much for you? And I was like, no. It's just so different from everything I've ever heard. And he was like, it's just what came to me. So here's Amy talking too much again. The funny version is we have a friend that I met through April who's been on our show. Yeah, Jen Belmer. She's been on our show. She does ancestral past life work, and I did a session with her without even telling her about the Death Witch story. And she was like, somewhere, I think she said like the 12th century or something, you were some sort of death doula, and you were ostracized for it, and you were essentially called a witch, and you were tortured for like a year, and like all this shitty stuff happened that is now showing. Anyways,
and there was also stuff with sex, though. People called you like some sort of, like, she said something because you repeated this to me.
Well, there was sexual trauma in it. They did some bad things. She said, and I know this might be triggering for some people, so just a warning, because this is an ancestral trauma story that is based on energy that not everyone believes in. But she said that my body was tortured in sexual ways, not with people's body parts, but with like brooms, because I was a witch, you know. And anyways,
so it's a sex witch, yeah, but a death witch.
But death witch. But now I own it. Now I'm like, I'm a motherfucking death witch, but I am more of a sex witch, and so I really love that part. But I do have 2 questions for you that are semi and not related. Okay, so 2 questions. Number 1, I know what you're saying. Create this self-practice. It's really going to help you. We have done a masturbation May challenge. Last year was a little shorter, but the year before it was a 30-day challenge for 10 minutes a day. Self-pleasure. It doesn't even mean you need to touch your genitals. Don't have a goal towards orgasm. And a lot of people participated. It was on Instagram, still anonymous, and it was hard for a lot of people, really easy for some people. So this is a 2-part question. They're different from each other too. Number 1, for the folks that are like, I hear what you're saying, it's really hard for me to choose to start doing this. I'm busy. I have kids. Yeah. I wake up and I have my routine.
I'm not attracted to my partner anymore.
Or at the end of the day, I don't have spaciousness to do it, or I do, but I watch the Netflix. You know, what is your advice to those people to finally get themselves to at least like maybe start? And then this is so separately related, but as we're talking about masturbation, what is your stance on sex toys, specifically vibrating sex toys, as a part of that practice?
Totally. Okay, so question number 1, I'd say like, fuck it. You know, like in some ways, working on your sexuality is like, I'd say it's like taking ayahuasca. Like, you're going to like permanently change yourself. You're going to discover shit that maybe you wanted to know, maybe you didn't, but it's true, you know, or not. It's actually, it is a life-changing, destiny-altering decision. And we don't think of sex that way because we weren't taught to honor sex or respect its power. So like, if it's not time and you would rather just watch Netflix and not experience that with your partner, like, God, at least don't feel bad about it anymore. Like, you know, I'd imagine you're listening to this podcast because you want to do something different or you're interested in it. but sometimes you just have to kind of like circle around it until it just locks in and it's time. Like when I got my first like jade egg situation, it took me 3 years. I like bought this, it's this egg that you put up your pussy, and like people freak out because like maybe jade, whatever, you shouldn't put in your body. We made borosilicate glass eggs, which is the same material they make medical devices out of. So like whatever, do the practice. And like the idea is that like, put it up your vagina, do yoga with your pussy. You're going to have all these mind-blowing results. 3 years I carried the egg with me. I was like, oh, I'm going to like change my life. This is going to be amazing. Blah, blah, blah. And like, I literally would just like set it on the windowsill. I'd like put it in bed, like carry it around. I was like whatever, like moving around all the time during my Asia days. And 3 years. And I finally, one day I was in Bali and I put that egg inside my vagina and I did an online practice. It was like an online course, and I like my womb like unlocked to the degree that like I thought I had chronic fatigue. I couldn't behave, and it was just like boom. And I was like, whoa. It was like a 10-minute practice, and I was like, holy shit. So like, I don't know. I wasn't ready until I was ready, and that's kind of a thing sometimes. So there's part that. The other thing that I would say when it comes to this is like, I am so resistant. I'm so highly resistant. So for me to make myself do my own practices, which is like a whole thing, right? Because I want to do all my practices. I want to live the practices. Sometimes I have to be like, just a minute, Layla, just 1 minute, right? That's very helpful. It's also very helpful to help put myself into a more pleasurable state by like taking CBD, like something really light that like helps relax my nervous system, helps my body feel more sensual. And like, then I kind of want to do 5 minutes of pussy breathing in the bathtub. But we sometimes turn this into this like whole big thing, and it has to be perfect and it has to be long and all of that. I teach 45-minute practices. I don't do 45-minute practice. I do 45-minute practice like a couple times a year if I'm lucky. The rest of the time,
honest.
It's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm so proud of if I crush a 20-minute egg practice, I'm like, wow, I like crushed my day. So also like really lowering expectations and just doing like the tiniest little thing, because you might love it and it might inspire you to do more. So that's really, really helpful.
Love that.
That's good. That's what there's like this whole psychological study I read about when people are setting their New Year's resolutions, right? And I'm going to be an athlete, or I'm going to be a runner. Instead of doing that, there's value to just saying, I'm going to run once a week. And it doesn't matter for how long. Instead of I'm going to be a runner, because you'll have more success. Instead of saying I want to lose weight or I want to have better sex, you say I want to take it just day by day. I love that information.
Or like I'm going to run for 10 minutes a day for
or
this
I'm gonna
week
walk
and just
briskly.
see what happens.
Yeah. I did that with my anal virginity kit. I carried around I wanted to give my anal virginity to a worthy
Don't
human.
Say that way. Oh God, Jesus.
I didn't say take it.
Give it away.
But I wanted to give it away. No,
it's a gift to you.
So this is what I'm saying. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Thank you for interjecting during my
virginity didn't get canceled, but anyways.
My anal. I wanted to have anal sex for the first time, so I would carry this kit around that I called my anal virginity kit because it was like funny. To me, it was funny. I didn't share that always, but I carried it around for 2+ years, and I never used it. And then my first anal experience, didn't even use the fucking kit. I was just like, fuck the kit, let's do it. So it's funny that, but you're like wanting
and now
to prep
she really
yourself.
likes anal sex.
And now it's one of my favorite places to go, one of my favorite orifices to visit. And so I appreciated the jade egg share because people swear by these things. So being gentle with yourself, being prepared, but lowering the expectations, that is some badass boss queen advice right there from Layla Martin. This is why you do what you do. So thank you for that. This is why you have an incredible outlet for offerings and courses.
But I still want to know about the vibrators.
The vibrators, yeah, totally.
I want to know your stance because a lot of people in the
true.
Tantra world are very anti-vibrator.
Are they anti? Like
a lot of them are. Oh yeah.
They're also kind of like anti-clitoris too. They're like, don't ever, like you couldn't even avoid the clitoris. Like
cervix.
I didn't know that.
You're like the clitoral legs wrap around the opening of the vagina, so you basically can't avoid it. Anyways.
Yeah. It's all connected.
That makes me sad.
It's interesting. And I guess I get the complexity of like our brain is our largest sex organ. We can get used to or addicted to anything. To fucking Netflix, to being gardening in my yard, to eating too many tomatoes to drugs to
Yeah.
sex to alcohol, porn. And I know that when our brains get used to having sex a certain way, and we think that's the only way that we get the orgasm, we can get stuck on that. My knowledge, I've taken many vibrator fasts before because that's how I had my first orgasm. I go through different phases of kind of getting stuck on that. But I am aware that that is not me. That's a part of me, and that's not a permanent part of me. And so if you have a strong stance against vibrators, I welcome that. I'm just curious what you think as someone you seem kind of like a fusion, right? You're like tantra and practical. So I wonder what you think.
Yes. Okay, so the way that I look at it is that there are a couple of different phases to sex and pleasure. And one is like, oh my God, we live in a sex negative world. Everything's overwhelming. Like capitalistic, busy ass digital society is not designed for us to be like the sexual creatures that we were born to be. So like, get your pleasure where you can, right? Or like for generations of women who were taught that like, however the fuck a guy bangs you, right? Like you're just supposed to get off on it. To be able to use a vibrator and have an orgasm was like an act of sovereignty and empowerment and rebellion, right? So like understanding even the history of the vibrator is really powerful for like how important those tools can be in the context of our society. So there's two things about vibrators that I have seen and experienced personally myself. The first is there's a quality to a vibrator orgasm where you're like pushing your body into orgasm, because the vibrating sensation isn't like, let me like open into this and like surrender to being penetrated by the pleasure of this. It's almost like a push on the pleasure to the point where like climax is almost like pushed out of you. And so in the reason why a lot of Tantra teachers and Taoist teachers are kind of against that is most of the Tantric Taoist training around orgasm is to not tense around the pleasure and build into a climax state where you get this like firework of pleasure and then it drops down really suddenly, but to actually inhale and like surrender open to the pleasure. Now, I can say in my own body and people that I've talked with extensively about this, like the quality of the orgasm when you tense around an orgasm and almost like squeeze one out is categorically different from when you've like surrendered open and you let the pleasure penetrate you to the core. It's like your soul gets fucked. And I would say that most of us can agree that like soul fucking is better than squeezing one out. So if you're... However, in this pleasure-starved world, like get it where you can, you know, like it's almost like food, right? If you're starving, eat whatever the fuck is around and like celebrate it and be into it and like love it, right? Then like, can you get into a more rarefied training where you're like, actually, like instead of squeezing one out, I'd like to retrain my nervous system to be able to be surrendered and receptive to the power of orgasm such that I can ride the ecstatic waves of God bliss inside my body. Totally. So is there like an argument to be made that like as you develop your sexuality, taking breaks from vibrators, not using them every time you self-pleasure, et cetera, totally, right? Is there anything wrong with a vibrator? Fuck no. Like I hope you have as many orgasms as possible and as much pleasure as possible before you die. The last piece, and I mentioned it already, is every single time you have an orgasm, you are training and strengthening that neural pathway to orgasm, and your body likes to do what it knows and your brain likes to do what it knows it can survive. So the more that you do one particular route to climax, the more that your body is going to want that, even if other options are available to you. So if you have a vibrator orgasm over and over and over and over again, and someone tries to like go down on you or have anal sex with you, your body's going to be like, wait, like, I don't want to, like, that's not how we're used to doing it. Like, I like doing it the way that we like to do it. So I would say that the risk with vibrators is if you only ever use a vibrator for self-pleasure, you are training your body to only want to orgasm in that particular way. And that is where there is like a risk because of all the people that I work with. That is a very common complaint. Like, I got so into using my vibrator that I now cannot enjoy or as easily access other types of pleasure. And so I like to teach like orgasmic flexibility flexibility and pleasure flexibility, which means that I'm not just allowing my system to get pleasure from one known pathway all the time. I'm not touching myself the same way. I'm not always using the same sex toys. I'm not always fucking in the same position, because what that gives me is the flexibility then to have more mind-blowing sex, because it's hard to get out of your mind when you're like, well, I can only be touched this way with this pressure of sensation in this position, and that's the only way we can orgasm. A lot of people get into that. Like, I spent like a decade being like, my legs have to be closed, clitoris has to get touched in a circular way. So again, no shame. Like, I've told you, I probably need to be having a fantasy about a boss having sex with a babysitter or whatever. And like, you know, like it's like super real. So like, I have absolutely been there. Again, no shame when I'm talking about any of this, but we have to have these conversations to be able to also understand what's possible. So when we're choosing that one pathway over and over again, your body will then like to travel along that pathway. And so creating orgasmic flexibility and pleasure flexibility is about saying, okay, this time, even though I like my legs shut, I'm going to leave them open. Even though I have an easier time with the vibrator, I'm just going to use my hands, or like a dildo. Or even though I like fantasizing about this one thing, this time I'm not going to fantasize about anything. I'm going to fantasize about something different. And slowly, what that gives you is just more choice and option without there being anything wrong with a vibrator. It's more like understanding its impact.
And maybe being okay with, as you try these other things that are new, not having an orgasm right away. And
no, your body's going to be like, oh, hell no. Like, it's not like, you're going to like, literally like when I like to get out of holding my legs really tight, right? And masturbating that way, I literally would keep my legs open and my body would be like, close them. And I'm like, we're not going to close them. Come on. You know, like I literally had to override this desire to stay in habit. But then that's what also, and like I teach this in a lot of my programs, is like literally even masturbating in different sexual positions so that you train your body to be able to let go in those positions and enjoy them, so that you become more flexible in how you can experience sex.
It's all the practice. You've talked about practice. And I think that's the best association. It's like retraining your biggest sex organ, as Amy mentioned, and you've also mentioned, is to practice. And I want to again, I want to give you the accolades of your associative relational kind of things. When you talk about if you're starving and you find a can of Spam, you're going to fucking eat the shit out of that Spam and you're going to love it. So it's like, I love that. I don't know if it's a metaphor. Fuck, my grammar is, I need to go back to English class, but I love the associative terms that you've used in terms of like relationships and sex to if you're starving, or, I mean, and it's so true, because you have to sort of practice these things, and you might have access to all of this beautiful food, but you'd enjoy that can of Spam if you were motherfucking starving for 6 months, right? So it's the same with sex and using.
And so should you.
Yeah. Nothing against Spam, y'all.
Yeah. Spam musubi before is real good.
Yeah. Well, it is. And I could not, and just this is the last piece, because I want people to be able to find you and work with you and know your offerings, because you are such an incredible source of information, and you can really help people shift their perspective and their lives to have mind-blowing sex. So I think this is so important for them to know about you. And I just want to, again, bring it back to the retraining in my brain. Before Shameless Sex, even, I had trouble orgasming with a partner because I'd been masturbating since I was 5 years old, not knowing that it was masturbation at the time. And I never knew that you could have orgasms with partners, with penetration, with all these things. And until this...
Just with teddy bears.
Just with teddy bears, and then just solo with
the original
vibrators.
sex toy.
The original sex toy. Yeah. So I had to retrain my brain, and I did it. And I actually did it. And now the sex that I've been able to have after applying the tools from amazing guests like you have really helped me become more shameless in my sex and have more mind-blowing sex. So this is why this stuff is so important. And it's being gentle with yourself, as you mentioned, and then and not holding like, I'm going to be a master at mind-blowing sex. Don't put that pressure on yourself, right? Release it and be like, I'm going to take it day by day and moment by moment. So I love all of this information that you shared, Layla. Thank you. And so that brings me to the point. That was just real life April talk about how shit
I love real life
can get
April
happen.
talk.
So how how can people find you, work with you? What's your social security number? What's your credit score? I'm just kidding. No, can you plug your offerings, your courses, your social media outlets? And I know we also have this multi-orgasmic bliss guide link too. So please share and let me stop talking.
In the show notes, there will be a link for 30 days to your multi-orgasmic bliss guide. So just click on that. But tell us all your things.
All right. First of all, me and my friend were like going through Raya last night, and some guy had like a snapshot playing to like the musical track of like his credit score.
Wait, say it again. What was it?
It was like because like on Raya, like the profiles play to music, and then it was like his credit score, like with like a background musical track.
What was his credit score?
814.
Oh, yeah. Damn, that's why he's.
It was like a 608. He was like,
Is that attractive to you when you say like, oh yeah?
Some people might be like, I can buy a house or maybe 5.
Good for him.
Sorry, that was fucking great. I love that. What song was playing though? Really? Yeah. It better have been a fucking good song.
I'm more into the song than the credit score. Personally.
If it was a great song, it might have turned me on. If it was like not a good, I was like, I'm a strong no right now. All right. Well, you can go to laylamartin.com and you can sign up with your email address. That's the way to get every single week. I share like a very practical video. So training yourself in these ways, staying really connected to like how to make these little but powerful improvements in your sex life. And also there's a bunch of free offerings as well. And you can totally, wherever you are sharing that link, get the 30-day guide to being multi-orgasmic. So that's a systematic training of how you actually can move from having like a singular orgasm or an orgasm that's not as full-bodied into literally being able to work with sexual pleasure such that you can expand the length and intensity of your orgasm pretty profoundly. So again, you get that by putting in your email address down below. And those are the main ways to connect with me, the most powerful ways. And then we share with you through, once you're connected via email, all of our programs, the coaching certification, which is a year-long professional certification to become a Vita sex, love, and relationship coach. And then we have lots of 6-week trainings that we have throughout the year for men, women, couples, and non-binary individuals.
And what about social? Are you Layla Martin just on all the things?
Well, I'm secretly trying to push you to the email list because that's where
I'd
prefer that you get on my email list, but you can also find me on YouTube and Instagram.
Go email, and if you go follow Shameless Sex Podcast on Instagram, we'll tag her anyways. So there you go.
Aw, Layla, and that's LAYLA, everyone. So don't get confused because
she keeps wanting to say Laila over
I
here.
do, and you know what? I like Layla. It's Eric Clapton's Layla got me on my knees. Yeah, that's not a good Eric Clapton rendition, but that just came out. Okay, I channel it. It was not. No, it was a 2 out of 10.
Derek and the Dominoes. Eric Clapton is real hard to nail.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, you need more. I need more electric guitar background. Amy, where's it at? Yeah. All right.
And then you just have to be heartbroken and in agony over your best friend's wife. You know, I think that's the part you're missing.
I know. I do need some of that emotional stress to help me out with my
I just
Eric
went to my first
Clapton
punk rock show. Maybe you should come with me next time.
You know what? I could use some punk rock. So if you all out there in listener land, the Shameless Sex Revolutionaries, if you want to experience some of what Amy and I have to offer the world of I'm talking about wine right now, and Perry's distracting me with his bone, not a boner, just a bone in his mouth. So
my dog's a dick.
Yeah, he's being a dick. So we're talking about Margins wine. You can get down on your knees and drink a glass of Margins wine. I beg you, darling, please. Okay, Layla, go check it out. Go to marginswine.com. Sign up for their newsletter as well. They have only a few releases a year. It's locally made here in Santa Cruz, California, women owned and operated. And Amy and I have been big fans for years now. So if you do that, and you can just be in the know, and if you want to buy some wine anywhere you are, not all the way in the United States, some places you can't, but just check their website and they'll let you know, because I'm not a fucking ABS What is it? Alcohol Bureau Administration? I don't know.
ABC?
ABC. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not working with them.
Yeah.
So you got to go to their website to find out.
ABC.
But go to Shameless Sex 10. Use the coupon code to save 10% on 3 or more bottles, or Shameless Sex 15 to save money on 6 or more bottles. Last but not least, I have to prompt you, invite you to go and rate us on iTunes. Give us 5 stars. Amy and I read every single review. She filters the bad ones, so just leave good ones. And that way,
I can take the bad
I
ones.
can't take criticism.
But we
okay?
don't want the bad ones.
That's because I had too much criticism as a child. Okay, there's my child trauma.
Poor girl.
Poor girl. All right, we love you, Layla. Thank you.
Yeah, Layla, you're so amazing.
Fucking badass.
And we'll have you back. You're incredible.
Yes, and you had such awesome information to share with everyone, and I know that everyone out there can have this mind-blowing sex that they desire. So we will see you next Tuesday. Ciao for now.